what time are we gone? 2? Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming today. Come on in. I'm completely fine with a packed space. Bow Valley's probably not fine. It's probably like a fire hazard, but we just won't say anything. Yeah. So a 2 or 3 months ago, I saw on LinkedIn, James says, "Hey, we need some speakers for B-sides." I had done B-sides as a speaker last year, and I had a blast doing it. So I thought, you know what? This year, I'm gonna do it again and have fun. And so it's a little easier, okay? Doing it for a second time in a row. But then when I went to do immediately on syndrome, and I went to read the blurb that I apparently had written myself, and it wrote about how I was going to make it all lighthearted and stuff. And I was like, oh my goodness, here I'm going to talk about this heavy subject matter, and now I got to make this thing lighthearted. And so that did wonders for my imposter syndrome, having to think about do something somewhat comical for the talk. But today I want to talk about something that's really important, something that I actually struggle with imposter syndrome. Okay, I don't talk about it a ton with people, and I think honestly that might actually be a part of sort of the challenge about why imposter syndrome sort of exists and it keeps on rolling. But I want to also start off with a little bit saying about myself that I do work at SAIT. I'm an instructor at SAIT. But what I'm going to be talking about today, I see a lot of faces that are familiar, that I recognize in industry and students existing and previous semesters. What my talk is, SAIT would be completely fine with me saying all the things I'm going to say, but I do want to make sure that you know that everything that I'm going to give you is my opinion, okay? And it's coming from my view. Okay. So the topic that we're going to talk about is what is this? What is this thing that we keep sort of hearing about? And then some strategies that I've put in place in my own life to combat it. What is? Oh, there's animation. That's a happy accident. What is imposter syndrome? Okay, before we get too much into it, I do want to say as well, I am not going to give you any stats today. Stats are good and they're important for knowing things, but what I want to tell you is really more from a personal side. So what is my experience with it? What's my story with me? How it impacted people around me? How have I seen it impact other people in industry? Because I hear it every once in a while. So the way that I define imposter syndrome is this feeling of inadequacy, or you're put into a position where you sort of feel like, I don't think I belong here, or I'm not good enough to be where I am. And that really defines how I would put imposter syndrome for myself. I don't know if that resonates with anybody else here, but that's really the vibe that we get from it. So like I said, I'm gonna connect this to my story and talk a bit about where are the moments in my career where I've most experienced this feeling of imposter syndrome. So I got the logo up there. When I started at SAIT, I've been at SAIT for about 6 years, and when I was a student there, and I had awesome instructors, they really inspired me and encouraged me to go off and learn about IT. Every single instructor they were older. They had wizard beards. They could look at a machine and they would immediately be fixed. And as a younger person, and think, oh my goodness, you're amazing. How do you do this stuff? And so I of what it is to be an instructor with me as I went and graduated, as I got jobs in IT, as I got jobs in security type roles. And then it got to a point where I had an opportunity to apply to work as an instructor at SAIT. And I was like, oh my goodness. I, people that I had not idolized, but had held in high esteem. And I went for it. I interview, got hired, and now I've been there for 6 years. But in my first year, it was rough. And I didn't really have anybody to I was feeling. Because how I was feeling was a strong feeling of imposter syndrome. Because remember I said I had this idea that you had to have been in industry for multiple years in order to have knowledge, in order to relay that knowledge towards people that also want to know something. And then to have a group of people that are looking at you and saying, I you know something. I'm thinking like, oh man, if only you knew that I just reviewed this topic for the first time like 2 weeks. Just in case anymore. So if I have cartoons. But somebody gave me some really great advice that really my trajectory at SAIT, how I was going to treat my time with students and with colleagues and being in industry. And it's going to be actually one of the 5 slides, one of the 5 tips that we're going to have here. I only have about 20 slides. So my goal here, this is what I do. This is why I would do class. I sort of jump around a little bit. I'm going to give it about half an hour, 35, 40-minute talk, and then leave time for questions because I find the engagement piece. And then 2 years ago, I started this stupid thing, Red Blue Labs. And yeah, plug. And oh my goodness, talk about imposter syndrome. It's trying to navigate that dog pile of randomness and trying to be just another voice in the mix of people that exist on YouTube, looking at big players like John Hammond or Bombal and looking at the quality of their videos and then looking at mine and comparing myself to them, completely oblivious to the fact that I had at that point had never done it before. I had never really edited videos before, never got my face online. In fact, it took me like a year of doing YouTube stuff to even be remotely okay with my face showing up online. It was a very big emotional internal battle to be okay with that, which I'm kind of okay with now. You notice I said kind of, kind of okay. If you ever see the videos, you'll see that it's only one area of my room because all the other areas like boxes and a bunch of garbage, which reveals too much about me as a person. I don't need that online. But in my career, I've had 2 moments of some big imposter syndrome infused moments. And I'm every once in a while, I get a new course that has content that's tough, and they say, "Hey, Andrew, in a week, you're teaching it." And I'm like, "All right, let's rock." Or I'll be looking at comments, and the noob, you suck. I hate your videos. And that has if you don't have some things in place, toxic, very toxic environment. For the most part, everything's pretty positive around YouTube. You never read the comments. Well, that's how you get engagement. That's a bit of my story. But now the question is this prevalent in cyber security? I'll poll the room. What do you think? Yes or no? Yes? Yes. And not as many for the no's. I'm going to assume. What is? What is prevalent? What is the question? Is imposter syndrome. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I got an answer. Then no. I missed. Okay, so I was thinking, like, what kind of answer for this one? I'll start with no. Why is it not? I think that it honestly exists in every industry. No matter what field you find yourself in, there's going to be a moment where you have this feeling of like, oh, I don't think I'm here, and you can't even sit in your own skin. So it has to exist. I mean, we're not the only industry, but then yes, because I exist in this cybersecurity bubble, and so the only viewpoint that I have is of things relevant to this field and what it touches. And so yes and no, right? But the real key to take away from it is how does imposter syndrome impact you in the space that you currently are? Okay. So before I get to the items that we can use to combat imposter syndrome, I'd like to talk a little bit about what have we done to actually sort of create an environment that fosters imposter syndrome. And not pointing fingers. That's why I did the group symbol. I'm going to show you a meme here, and I pulled it before I get there. I pulled it from LinkedIn like 4 days ago, and I don't know if you know this, but LinkedIn is the place where memes go to die. Yeah. Well, that's earlier. They're born on 4chan. Their early infancy is Reddit. Then later life is Facebook. And then if you see a meme that's LinkedIn, you're like, oh my goodness. Anakin meme one more time. I'm out of here. I am sick of that meme, by the way. It was funny at first. Okay, so I apologize. It's a bit of a gross image, all right? From Star Wars, right? No, it's from Harry Potter. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go into depth about what the scene's about, but it's a later movie, and I'm going to pull it apart. It has some funny aspects to it, but what I want to actually point out is how things like this can actually foster a negative environment in general. We got this Voldemort, but he's a creature that's looking pretty rough. And Harry says, "What happened to him?" And then Dumbledore, thank you. He tried to get into cybersecurity without experience. So yeah, on the surface, it's funny. But what is it? For me, it frustrates me because what is it saying about our industry? In that it is, if you don't have any experience, you can't get into this field. If you don't belong, you don't fit into this space, right? This is too hard for you, right? I'll save questions to the end. If that's all right. I don't think that's right. I don't think it's like, yeah, there's some humor there, but it creates this air that, I don't know, it just doesn't sit right. I got one more meme here. And beginner hackers, Aristotle Linux, right? And it is funny, right? I chuckled at first. And then this was actually 4 days ago as well, pulled from the same thumb flip on LinkedIn. But let's take, yeah, I agree, it is funny, but let's pull ourselves back a little bit and look at what is kind of this comedy, this meme saying, and how is it potentially impacting our space. So we've got a person, they've installed Kali Linux, and they're assuming that just because they've installed Kali Linux, now they're a hacker. Okay, and why aren't you doing anything? So it's portraying new people to the realm of cybersecurity as lazy, doesn't want to work hard, et cetera, feed onto that thesaurus of negativity. And yeah, we see these, if you're on LinkedIn at all, you see this pop up every once in a while, right? What I'm trying to say is that the things that we put out there to the public does actually have an impact, and it creates an environment that may be hostile to people that want to be in cybersecurity, which can have an impact on what people feel about themselves. imposter syndrome, right? Another one here. Chris, you gave me this slide. Gross. So I can hear the murmuring. So it's a security certification roadmap. While I was glad to get this because it would put a lot of good perspective into the certs, but dear goodness, this thing is overwhelming, right? As a new person to cybersecurity, you're thinking, well, what do I need to do to get into this field? People say, well, you need to get your certs, right? That's great. Or you could attempt to do one of these things. Go down that path, and I am overwhelmed when I see that. Having this as big as it is and as daunting as it is, you might not agree with my opinion on this, and that's fine. But it kind of creates sort of this environment where, as a cybersecurity person, you're like, maybe I don't belong in this because I don't have tech, or I've been in cyber for 5 years and I don't have tech, right? Or I've been in 10 years and I don't have all these certs. Or people are getting new ones all the time, and it feels like there's new certs being invented every day as well. And that's just my personal feeling. But it does feel like that. Okay. I have two more things that we ourselves do that sort of foster imposter syndrome. LinkedIn. I personally like it for some things. Okay. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see that I post Red Blue Labs things because that's myself trying to market my brand. I also use it for communication with networking, like business networking. That's what it's for. That's what it was supposed to be for. Okay. But it also turns into this cool, this city environment. There's this temptation, and I have fallen prey to this temptation. I've done it, where you post this thing. Look at this cert I got. Look at it, I got a job. Happy when people are moments, and I'll be honest, where somebody's posts, I got this cert, and I'm like, shoot. I don't have that cert. What's wrong with me? Right? And that's the imposter syndrome poking its head. This is the place where my imposter syndrome is like stabs me right in the side and makes me feel inadequate. And a feeling that I've put on myself, because really I should be feeling proud and happy for people that are getting certs and pushing themselves into this world that I really, really like. I love, and my hope is to be in there for a long time, God willing. Let's go to the next slide. How's my pace? Am I going too fast? We're okay? Okay. Here's the thing here that kind of makes me curious about. There is nothing else worth trying. Bug bounty and pen. There's nothing else worth doing in cybersecurity. It's sort of like this from LinkedIn media, and not so much from like my peers. Like if I were to talk to any of you, some firewall work. I do lots of IPS. I do lots of IPS. Not that I'm going to keep naming things, but that's not how much money I did making bug bounties. He's like, I wish I had. It would solve a lot of problems. Or I enjoy doing hacky hacks. Man, I wish I could pen testing on regular and making mad on YouTube. So a part of it, I think, is an issue, and you don't have to accept this or even believe me that it's a challenge. But I saying, right? Talking about firewall rules is not a sexy topic. But talking about making $100,000 doing bug bounty, man, that's some good clicks on a video. All right, I'll just put it out there. So you won't see any videos from me. Look how much money I made doing bug bounty, because I find it a little obnoxious. And I mean, those videos, they are entertaining. Okay. So also, I've learned that PowerPoint has this like AI feature that like makes slides for you. It's wonderful. Oh my goodness. I couldn't have designed this. This is not my specialty. uh, yeah. How to I personally believe that it's an issue. All of us, myself included, have contributed to it unintentionally. Um, the first tip, though, is the reference earlier, where I had a senior person at SAIT pull me aside and give me this piece of advice, and it was studying. Okay, there, but it really makes sense. So if I'm faced with a networking class, I'd say that's kind of like that's my jam. I love doing and firewalls and prevention detection. I love that jazz. But if there's an area that you feel weak in, study the area and get your knowledge to be stronger, so that when you do show up to the class, you can speak with confidence because you understand the subject matter. So my first year, I spent, and my wife could attest to this, that I spent quite a bit of hours reading textbooks over and over again, practicing my lectures before the class. If there was a new subject matter that coming up the next semester, I would work like 3 months in advance so that I could have confidence in whatever subject matter was expected of me. Okay, and that made a huge difference. But I also quickly learned that this on its own can't cut it. It's not enough. Okay, because imposter syndrome has a curious way of finding its way in there. How does studying change how you feel bad about yourself when you see a colleague get a cert that you didn't know they were studying for? It can't. So this can't be the only thing that we have as our tool set to combat imposter syndrome. Another slide I forgot was animation on, but I'm really excited about it. I really enjoyed Michael's talk this morning because you had mentioned syndrome, and that you struggle with it. Yeah, and I've said now that I struggle with it, and maybe we should be more open about talking about it with our colleagues and with others, because it normalizes it a bit to be like, yeah, I struggle. It sucks. So I put in friends. It's a very general term, but Michael had also said something later on in his presentation about reaching out to somebody. That makes a huge difference. Being siloing yourself into this bubble that you've made yourself, where you don't feel like you belong or you're inadequate in some fashion, it can't help by being all by yourself. So those don't necessarily need to be colleagues. I mean, that can help if you've got some like healthy relationships with colleagues and be like, I'm struggling, and being honest and say, I'm having a hard time with this and this, and I saw that post on LinkedIn. I have people in my life that I can go to, and I have some friends at SAIT, and I can say this sentence. I saw this post on LinkedIn about this former student that got a cert, and I feel like crap. And I said, can I have a hug? And it might sound silly, but honest to goodness, having like a hug from a friend that you trust can make a world of a difference. I'm not telling you to go and hug people, but I like hugs once in a while. They're nice. But reach out. Don't be a solo person. No, I don't believe that we were made to be lone wolves. I believe that we are actually social creatures that really benefit from being around each other. So studying, friends. And the next one is faith. So now, 3 months ago when I was asked, or I said to B-Sides, I said, I want to do imposter syndrome. This is the slide that I struggled with, okay? Because it's a very personal slide. And I did tell you that I'm going to talk personally. I'm not going to preach at you. But I struggled with this slide because I don't feel like you can talk about ways to combat imposter syndrome without talking about a topic like this. Okay. And so when I refer to faith, I believe in myself because it's maybe that's not enough. Okay. I'm not going to spend a crazy amount of time on the slide. But there are a lot of religions on our planet. All right. And we can find solace and peace in that religion. And so why not use our faith to help us with this feeling of inadequacy? Okay. So for me, I said it was personal. For me, a main tenet of my faith is that what I do as a job doesn't matter. And what I do and how much money I make as a person comes from who I belong with in God. That's the main part of my faith. All right. So for whatever that is, and however that resonates with you, let that be a part of it for you. But it's all of us. Number 4. So studying, friends, faith, and then face your demons. So face your demons. It's kind of like an adage that we use, like face that thing that scares you. And that really is actually what I'm trying to get across here. So for me, a technique that I use to combat my imposter syndrome is that I intentionally take on that thing that scares me, and I try to wrestle it to the ground. So a thing that scares me at first was talking in front of crowds. So being in many people looking at you. That was on. Last year, I did B-sides. I was terrified. I don't know if people saw my talk yet last year, but my heart was racing the entire time. I was panicked all the way before. I was scared. How can I have enough information to provide people that have been in this industry for 15, 20, 30 years? I'm just Andrew, right? It's the imposter syndrome saying that I don't have contribute to this wonderful field. Okay, so face your demons. Another demon that I faced was doing YouTube. So I was scared to face online. I pushed through it and I got through it. I was aware that eventually I would get hate online. So I had to emotionally resolve the fact that somebody's going to hate this thing as the subs grow. Eventually, somebody's going to have a differing opinion, right? And then make it known to you. Unfortunately, but this is something that you can do in your career as well. I talk with students all the time, and I really enjoy it. I love having conversations with current students and people that have graduated. And a recurring conversation that I have is along the lines of like, I don't feel like I belong. I don't feel like I belong in this field. And I say, yeah, you do. You just gotta take the risk. You gotta go out there and take a risk to make your goal happen. Okay. One thing that I used to do was if I wanted to work in cybersecurity. Okay. But it didn't just happen. I had to make my opportunities occur. And so what did I do? I looked up companies that I wanted to, found key people in that, invited them out for coffee without the expectation of them giving me a job. And my goal through that was to make my face known so that if I ever put a resume in that stack of 300 resumes, that my name would stand above the rest. And it worked. I ended for an intellectual property audit. It was amazing. I was just a young community that I jumped on, and it was because I went out for coffee, and the person hiring, they knew my name. So I encourage you to do that as well. Think about what your goal is, and then what can you intentionally do to get there. because goals don't have a tendency to just occur naturally. Okay, unless you're lucky. And then this one might seem self-explanatory. A good way to imposter syndrome is like time. Okay, so at the beginning, I had strong imposter syndrome, strong, but now year 6, I'm able to know what my topic is for the day, and then go in and then talk 2.5 hours, or networking, scanning, or intrusion detection, because I've got the knowledge from studying, I've got the time of being able to do this practice for a period of time, and even going to, I'm not going to say my videos are amazing, but if you look at the first ones, ooh, they're a little rough, and I think, at least I'm telling myself this, which helps with imposter syndrome, that I believe that I'm improving that, what I'm trying to accomplish. Well, this is fun. No! Hey, what happened, AI? You suck. Anyways, so I did say I was going to talk half an hour, 35 minutes. Look at that. I almost hit, I'll pause for 2:35, but I almost hit exactly 5. You're curious, I do. It talks a bit about my next venture into being imposter syndrome and combating something, which is making my own business, doing pen tests and security vulnerability assessments, security awareness training. So this is my attempt to push myself. Okay, and then if you're curious, you don't have to, but there's a YouTube channel. And with that, I'd love to open up the floor to questions. And if you want to go grab a coffee, I won't be offended by you going to do that. Go for it.
If you are a SAIT graduate, what kind of value do you? If this makes sense,
Oh, okay. You'll be next. What value does a SAIT grad? So this is me talking about SAIT. So I know I'm aware of that Bow Valley. Ah. Okay. So those 5 things. So there's some things that you can go into, and this actually apply to all people that learn security. But you went through a program that was strenuous and taught you a lot of things. There's the studying. You have actually, and this is one of the things that I really loved about my time at SAIT, was that I left with a strong group of friends. That friend that I said I could ask for a hug, that was somebody I graduated from SAIT, and I can phone up and I feel like crap today, man. Friends, you spent, if you went through school, you did do time. So you went from knowing potentially not much about the field to getting into 2 years, and then you exit with not 30 years of experience, but you have exited with 2 years of hands-on experience. So that actually is a tremendous amount of value. You can go to an employer and be like, hey, look at all the things that I did while I was at school. One thing I would encourage is to build up your own home lab. More and more I'm seeing hiring managers talk about the value of home labs, because it is actually a practical way to demonstrate. I, for one, if I was going to do interviewing, just ask a grad, hey, what do you do in your spare time? And if they said, man, I'm going to tell you about all this complicated home lab that I've set up, and they can rattle off bits about the thing that they're excited about, man, that speaks, this is me personally, that speaks volumes more than getting a security plus. Again, that's my opinion on that. Does that answer it a little bit?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Also, knowing that you have value. Tell yourself, I'm an unimportant person. Go for it.
So I've noticed on my time in LinkedIn, like ever since I graduated, I've spent a lot of time on the platform and trying to like make it a name, but professional. I've noticed a lot of like toxic positivity from the platform,
Yeah.
and that like everyone feels the need to give their 2 cents on what you should be doing, and like their idea of like what someone ought to be doing in order to like find success, and like how do you having trouble figuring out that? So, like,
Yeah. Keep going.
like how do you kind of distill what is most important out of what everyone says, because you're getting a bunch of different opinions, and
Yeah.
you as an individual might not like like relate or even like appreciate any like all of those opinions, but you want to like take in that advice even
Yeah.
though it's all kind of being forced down your throat.
Yeah.
So like
Well, and first off, your feelings of that are appropriate, and it's the thing that you just said. I'm sure that many people have thought the exact same thing. One thing that I do whenever I'm going through LinkedIn, because I do spend fair bit of time on there for the networking and whatnot, is to try to understand what people's motivation is. Right? Are they just sharing a positive blurb to get that click and get that yeah, you did it kind of thing? Is that their whole purpose? Did they just sort of like glean a top 10 list from somebody else's top 10 list and then repost it as like, whoa, take a look at these security tools. You should know these security tools if you want to be in security. You want to be in security, right? If you don't, you suck. And you're like, what? There's a lot of lists on LinkedIn. Have you noticed that? But what you have to do is one thing I encourage you to do is that slide where I talked about friends. So your friends are people that you graduated, people that you have around you, but they can also be former instructors. Go to them in message and be like, hey, be honest. Be like, hey, this. What do you think about this? What should I be getting out of this? Go to somebody who's been more senior in industry and ask them what their opinion is of it. And I've never met somebody in this industry that isn't open to having an honest conversation about what it's like to be in the industry. So you gotta think about it carefully. With a grain of salt, LinkedIn has to be taken. Go for it.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, so just like cybersecurity from what I know, specialized area of IT. And you find these days, you find lots of people trying to come into cybersecurity from an area of a zero technical area, so they've never done anything in IT, they've not done anything in any technical area, and they're coming into cybersecurity. And your topic here is talking about dealing with imposter syndrome. I think that, in my opinion, that it's always helpful to have some kind of technical experience. It doesn't necessarily have to be in technical support, help desk, all those areas always help to combat imposter syndrome when one does get into cybersecurity. Because coming from no technical knowledge, no IT knowledge, and you want to be directly into cybersecurity, I feel there's always going to be imposter syndrome. You're able to bridge that gap by doing something, you know, help desk, any of those areas that can help you build those fundamentals, that will always help you combat imposter syndrome. So if we just speak to that would be great.
No, and I completely agree. If you have a technical experience and then switching to cybersecurity, definitely can help combat imposter syndrome. I'm of the belief that all IT has to be infused with cybersecurity. I don't think that IT can be considered separate from the concept, because we have to build it up thinking about, you set up a router with a network, you got to consider like who's going to be using that thing. Can it handle throughput? Can it handle the firewall? What's the ingress egress situation going to be like? But another thing is, like, as an instructor, I see a lot of people from different walks that want to try and be in and want to get into cybersecurity, and I'm really jazzed. I'm really jazzed by that. A thing that can help with that, and I'm aware that I might be going off track, so I might have to like get your question again. is that, remember that slide I had about bug bounty and pen tests? That's definitely not the only things that cybersecurity has. We have all kinds of spaces within this realm that could be non-technical roles that somebody could fill, still relevant to cybersecurity. The map of what cybersecurity touches is actually quite large. So one of the things that we can do is to keep on encouraging each other that there is more than one avenue into this space. Did I answer it even closely? Yeah, just a little bit. We can talk a little bit afterwards if I didn't do good enough. Go for it.
Sorry, Andrew. As to the industry, here's Europe so much. People with 30, 40 years in the industry who still feel imposter syndrome.
Oh.
People who have 5 years, 2 years in the industry, but yet we all, as he so eloquently said, we gatekeep and say, well, if you don't have this experience, or if you don't have that experience, or if you haven't done this, or if you haven't done that, or if you haven't jumped through this hoop or ducked under this bridge, you can't be in cybersecurity. You can't be in network IT. But the funny thing is that I had a meeting just a couple weeks ago with a CTO who has imposter syndrome. He's the head IT guy of his company.
Yeah.
It's imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
It's like you never grow out of it. So it's just it's a curious dichotomy when you think we gatekeep, but we also always don't feel like we have enough.
That's right. And I honestly, as I in my past, it was stronger, and as I progress, it gets a little weaker. But I used to think that I could completely get rid of imposter syndrome, but the truth is, I think it's actually going to be with me for my whole career. But what I can do is infuse things and strategies to make sure that that doesn't detrimentally damage my mental health. Right, this we get burnout is bad. Going for therapy is actually like, you should do it. It's like, think about like a car. You take your car in to get worked on once in a while, right? Why don't we do that with our brains? We shouldn't stigmatize it. Yeah, you even mentioned like a CTO. As a lot of people would like look up, oh, you're the chief of technology, and even sort of like treating that person in that way almost forces this feeling that they might adopt onto themselves because of it. It's a process, and you have to continually work through it and assess, like, why do I feel like this right now? When I'm on LinkedIn and I see somebody get a cert, I'm like, why do I feel like this? Right? Go for it.
I just probably had something to add to that.
Yeah, go for it.
I think it's something that I've noticed with myself across many disciplines is the moving goalpost problem. Like if you ever met a musician that says I'm perfectly happy, the better you get. Expecting journey versus destination.
Yeah, totally. So it's a process, and it takes time. But take those 5 things and think about how they connect with you. If any of them resonate, then it might make a difference. Go for it.
What's your opinion on people who are really confident that like a junior cybersecurity analyst position is an intermediate role and that you need to have done help desk sysadmin for 3 to 5 years before you can work that?
Oh, what's my opinion? So you're thinking of like an entry level position that requires 3 to 5 years of experience?
Partly yes, but also I haven't had the expectation is that we're getting that intermediate.
Yeah, I always have 2 cents. A whole dollar, yeah. I think that's silliness, honestly. If somebody has gumption, that stands for a lot. If somebody has grit, why can't they go off and be in that role? You know, people with grit, I love that word, grit. People with grit are going to take the extra time to do studying out of hours to get good at something. That's another reason I put out Home Lab, because this is something you can like talk about in an interview. Maybe I know a lot of people that have gotten into cybersecurity that didn't do help desk, right? I did help desk. a little bit later in my career. I did it sort of like backwards. And the help desk was beneficial. I did learn about client relations, which is helpful in security, because the secret about security is that it's not always computers. Yeah. You're actually dealing with people that for some reason keep on clicking on the thing that you told them, don't click on that thing.
That's so true.
Does that help a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yourself, and then Hassan. Well, you know what? You haven't had a question. Can I go him first?
I'm all for you, Chrissy, going Venus, but
Yeah.
let's say someone never really networked, and they go to the Calvary East to network for the first time, and they get their face known out there, but they think nothing comes out of it, and they're afraid that if nothing kind of comes out of it, not only would they be disappointed, but their imposter syndrome would even get worse. What would you say for that someone to
Yeah.
build their paranoid?
That's a great question, and it's a very, very normal thing to feel. I've gone to a number of networking events and left feeling like, oh, I don't know if I did anything good. Was it any value at all? And you have to also know that that you already bring value, and that you are an important person, not because of you attending these sites, but it's because you are skilled, you have knowledge, you are charismatic, and you have something to give to the industry. You got to try to tell yourself that a little bit, and believe it. But also, here's another thing: is like pick a senior person. And I mean, now I might be considered a senior person. I don't know. I mean, I have a mustache now. I didn't have one last year. That's another career upgrade. But somebody that you trust, that's been in industry, and use as a mentor. That's very valuable. I have a friend that I went to, and I said, I need mentoring, and because of that action, I was actually able to combat some of my imposter syndrome as well. Yeah, and I'm aware of our time as well, but I'm happy to talk as long as they keep me in here, or somebody marches in.
I think this is something I want to talk about. It's that
Yeah.
just the other day, just on LinkedIn, I was podcast and kind of posted in groups, which kind of coincides with what we talked about. And they said something. He said the next time you experience imposter syndrome, don't very offer yourself a big affirmation that you belong. Offer yourself, because I think a lot of times we've all kind of navigated different roles where you are successful in what you're doing, but every time you move to a new team or you're trying to switch, you have to do that. But if you can tell yourself, if I was successful in the other one,
Mm.
it's going to stop this.
Yeah.
There's always a learning curve when you just have communication. It takes time, and then you wrap up, and the company just steps in and then you through. So
Yeah.
that is something that's happening with me. So
Yeah. That's a good point. It fits into that time, looking back historically, right? Awesome. I'm aware of the time, so if you wanted to get to that last track, but if you have any questions, like, I'm happy to keep talking. Thank you. Thanks, guys. You've been lovely. I'm here all week. Well, that's right.
You care all week.
Yeah, no.
You teach here now?
No. I'm gonna give this back to these people. Hello.
how's it going?
Yes.
Oh, right.
10 minutes.
Okay.
Charges. It's charged, right? That's okay.
Yeah.
There's a microphone.
Sure, can I hear them?
No. You just can't see the general zero. If you're gonna park.
Yeah, let's sit like that upstairs.
Awesome. I can speak to. Should I say
Oh.
so? Mike Clark, I can speak to your. I love studying. I also have like a million things that I like to study and learn. So I kind of have to pick like where I want my career trajectory to go, and then I will pick things intentionally. So, for example, a while ago I wanted to learn about bug bounty. But the realm of bug bounty is like it's absolutely massive, and I don't have all the time that I wish that I could spare to um, studying bug bounty. So I have to pick a little bit. Where do I want to be, and what do I want to focus on? And yes, I agree. There is not enough hours in the day. Is that hopefully that answers your question, Mike?